This is the podcast, Kentucky Fathers. I was about to state my other podcast name, but this is Kentucky Fathers. And as you know, speaking to my listeners, we try to help fathers be better fathers today than what they were yesterday. And we feel that the best way to do that is to talk to other fathers, interview fathers, and we can all learn from other fathers. Today we have with us my brother in the Lord, Rick Martin. He's a father of three, got an older son and a younger son and a 6-year-old daughter. He's a working class guy here in Louisville, Kentucky, hardworking guy in Louisville, Kentucky, and I know him through my men's group that meets at Southeast Christian and led by Barry Suggs. Good brother in the Lord, man. Man, I'm so glad you're able to do this with me today.
I'm honored to be for the opportunity, Corbin. Thank you very much.
And let's start off talking about your father. What kind of man do you see him as?
Boy, it's hard to put one word on it. My father's very old school. He has old traditional values. He's an extremely hardworking man. I certainly, through being raised under him, saw the positive aspects of him. That was one of them. I saw the parts of him that I think he adapted from his father, that he brought into fatherhood with me and my late sister. So, but he was just a very hardworking guy, very impatient. You couldn't, until age has caught up with him, he always had to be doing something. I'd always joke that he would go out in the backyard and dig a hole and then 10 minutes later go and fill it up. I mean, he was just one of these guys. He could not sit down and just relax. He always was on the go doing something. He was very, he was a very impatient guy too. I mean, he was, but his work ethic, I would put it up against anybody. Honest worker, stress that. Blue collar guy. He was probably a lot smarter in school smart than he gives himself credit for, but he never considered himself a real intelligent guy. He was the middle child of three. The other two siblings were college educated, are college educated. He really had he had a lot of positive traits, and of course he had some faults as well, like we all do. But
right.
As I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate him more and more, and I realize I could have done a lot worse for a father.
Right. What were some of the things that you did with your dad? Father-son type deal things.
Well, I have to be honest. There really wasn't a lot because my dad was always working. And we were born and raised in Southern California, Santa Barbara, about 90 miles north of Los Angeles. And I grew up a big sports fan, most of all sports. So he would take me and the neighbor. My dad was very, very neighborly. He had to know his neighbors. So the guy that lived across the street, and then a friend of mine, once or twice a year, he would take us, drive down to LA, and we'd go see the Dodgers play. And as I got a little bit older in my childhood, I realized, and I don't want to pick on my dad. His heart, he was doing it because he had to.
Right.
I don't think his heart was really in it. I think he enjoyed chit-chatting with the neighbor. The 2-hour drive down there more than anything else. And a lot of times, if the games were during the week, my dad said, "Well, I got to get up early to go to work." So we'd leave in the 7th inning. And of course, I always thought that stunk. So my dad coached me in basketball, which probably could have gone a lot better. My father is I consider him pretty hard on me. He always expected more. It didn't matter how good or bad I was doing. It just seemed like he expected more. And I always tell the story. The first report card that I brought home in the 7th grade, I got 1A, 4 B's, and a C.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent a ton of time talking about the C, which, by the way, was in woodshop. Wasn't in English or math or history or anything.
Right.
He spent a ton of time, driving that in my head. And to explain that a little bit further without getting, too far gone, that's the way I found that his father was with him.
Okay.
He just pounded negativity in him, and nothing was good enough. So I realized, I had a lot of good times going to Dodger Stadium, but there's always sort of like this, background of guilt that I realized he really didn't want to go. I think he'd rather stayed home, but I just felt like it was just something that he sort of had to do.
Brother, do you think that as you grew older, as you started growing into adulthood, your perspective on your father mellowed a little bit and you guys started getting a little closer, or not?
My relationship with him over the years has gotten closer and better as my relationship grew with Jesus Christ. There is a definite correlation between the two, and I think that my relationship with Christ is sort of indirectly or directly made me realize that my dad's a sinner. He's just like all of us.
Right.
I'm far from the perfect father, and he wasn't either, but he did the best that he could. And for a middle-class family in a kind of affluent city in California, my sister and I got to do a lot. And it was a lot, if not all, because of my father's hard work. But I think that we've grown closer. I've sensed that his negativity and saying negative things has dropped in time. I think his relationship with Christ has grown also. I certainly can't leave that out, Corbin. Both of us have grown closer to Christ. And, these days, if you went over to my parents, he probably is sitting in front of the TV, watching the news channels and complaining. So, he still does things like that. But as far as complaining to me about maybe things that I need to work on, I don't get that a whole lot. And it's hard for my dad to express that he's proud of me. But I think he is, because of just his actions and the decisions I've made spiritually, to just be a better person.
Right. How would you describe him as a grandfather?
Oh, he loves his grandkids. Him and my oldest son, they knock heads quite a bit. And my oldest son, and he probably got a little bit of this me before. My oldest son saw me before Christ and after Christ. And before Christ, I was sort of a loudmouth, arrogant, know-it-all, my way or the highway. And I think my son has taken that. And so his views and my father's views a lot of times don't match. And so I think there's a little bit of a clash. Now, I think over time it's mellowed out. But my father is very, very proud of him. He has a very good job up in New York. My oldest son's work ethic is a lot like my father's. It is epic.
Wow.
It's very much epic. As far as the two younger kids, they love him to death. My dad, the one thing I can't leave out, it's impossible to leave this out without talking about my dad, is he is a fantastic photographer. And I think he's a pro. He sort of considered it a hobby / professionalism. So my son plays youth football, and my dad has gone to all his games and has taken pictures of it. And he has treated my kids with a lot, the youngest ones especially, with a lot more grace than he did me and my sister, and they love him to death. They absolutely love him to death. They're both of my youngest kids are graduating next week, and he'll be there videoing it and taking pictures and everything. And my dad is very giving with his time and his talents as it pertains to photography. So I think as a grandfather, I have absolutely zero problem or issues with how he treats my kids.
It's wonderful, brother. It's wonderful. Now we're gonna close in a couple of minutes, but I'm gonna throw you a little zinger here. How do you think your children perceive you as a father?
Well, I think my son probably thinks I'm a little tough on him. And I think he's probably right. A lot of times, Corbin, I find myself stopping what I'm doing or taking a step back, having a flashback that I'm being like my dad was to me towards Noah. And but I'll say this, my kids, this is something that I didn't have. My kids have zero doubt that their dad loves them, because there were times that, I would go to bed at night and go, does my dad really love me? I mean, he certainly doesn't act like it. And I know that he does. I just know that he's got kind of he had sort of a warped way of showing it. But my kids have I tell them I love them every day. I think, one of the things that I'll say, I do plenty of things wrong as a father, but I'm a humble guy. If I need to apologize to them, I don't waste any time doing it. Amen. And I think it's important that as dads give our kids an example of humility and show them, hey, we realize we're flawed as fathers.
Yes.
I think it makes them feel good. I think that relationship grows. And it also opens up them to apologize and forgive as well. So I'm very hard. I extend grace to everybody except the guy in the mirror, Corbin. So I'm a little hard on myself, especially when it comes to the role as an earthly father. But they know that I love them. They know that I support them. I'm focusing a lot more on Noah right now because he's the older one. He's the male. I'm teaching him how he should treat his younger sister, and really females in the female gender in general, how God would want him to view them. So so I hope they know that I love them. They know that I love Jesus, and following him is paramount. And it's just that's the most important relationship that they're going to have. I just told him that. I told him that yesterday.
Right. Well, brother, we're gonna stop there because that's the best way to stop. I mean, that was you passing on some profound stuff, and hopefully, another father who listens to what you just had to say, they'll learn from that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And I think as fathers need to encourage each other, Corbin. It's not easy. It's not. I don't think it was meant to be easy. Right. The world is going to throw these kids a lot of things, and we have to. I think the important thing is for me is you got to remember how you were raised and take the pluses and minuses from that and apply it to how you raise your kids. And you know what? I got to say this before we go. It helps to have an awesome wife. The mother is awesome. She more than makes up the flaws of differences in this guy. She's an incredible woman, and I couldn't be a real good. It's a co-pilot relationship.
There you go.
She's an awesome co-pilot. She's steering the plane back on course a lot of times when I'm having it veer into disaster. So, right. So I got to say that it really helps to marry a godly woman, and one that will encourage you and love you unconditionally in spite of your flaws. And I'm more than lucky in that regard. So,
Wow. That's great to hear, brother. It really is. And I appreciate you sharing that wisdom with us, man, because there a lot of it, like, hey, you're right, man. A lot of us fathers miss that. You got to have that godly woman with you.
Yep.
Beside
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
You got to be pouring into her and serving her and lifting her up.
Yeah, it's a good example for our kids when they, when they get married, what they're going to take, whether we like it or not, some of the stuff of their upbringing into that marriage. And I want my kids to see how I love my wife and vice versa, so they can love their, look for that love in their spouse and love their spouse the same way.
All right, brother. Appreciate you again, man. I will be in touch.
Thank you, Corbin.
And I'll let you know when we post this, okay?
Okay. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
You bet, brother.
Thank you.